Hi everyone, I am Rebecca from ChemKnits and welcome to the very first bonus video of the 2025 ChemKnits Chanukah special. Tonight we're going to be dyeing the bonus sparkle colorway. The sparkle fiber in our yarn this year is Lurex, which is a thicker silvery fiber that is plied in the yarn in a way so that way you get sort of like a regular wrapping of the fiber. And since this silver color isn't going to pick up any dye, it means that we have the potential to create something really high contrast. If we dye the yarn a more saturated color, that silver is just gonna pop. And that is exactly what I'm hoping to do today. Let's go take a look at the color palette I have planned. I put on my deluxe rubber respirator mask, safety glasses, and gloves so I could quickly swatch some purple and blue, plus a teal, but to swatch some acid dyes that I wanted to play with today. Because while a lot of these colors are very similar on the swatches, some of them are a bit more different once we look at the actual hue that we see with our powders. And because things are going to be blending, I want there to be some differences with what we start out with, because I don't want to pick three purples or something that are very, very similar together, because then once blended, you're not really going to feel any differences, even if they're really subtle. So that's the reason for just doing this check. And so I swatched the colors on one of the mini skeins, and then on the other two, I used those as my little yarn mops to wipe the dye off of my gloves before getting my hands dry to go into the next color. I let my swatch sit for a little bit so then I could take a picture and label it. And now I will go steam set it for 30 minutes and wash it off camera, but I have a better idea of the colors I want to use. Once I had all of the colors on the swatch, I needed to go ahead and wait 15 minutes. I know particularly the Hyacinth takes a little bit more time to sort of settle in and get situated. The way I have this set up today, it's really easy to label because I can label with the containers. And you can see the Hyacinth is slowly turning more of that beautiful sort of blue, lavender, periwinkle kind of color. And so I'm still a little bit torn over which colors I want to use. Like, I'm definitely thinking these ones, and I don't know if I want to bring a blue in or not. I'm a little undecided on that. I'm gonna go finish steaming this and then I guess think about it some more. But I'm not wrapping it up in plastic wrap or anything, so it may touch itself during the steaming process and we may get color transfer. But I'll see about arranging it in there with the rest of the yarn mops so that way we can have this little swatch preserved. I put on my deluxe rubber respirator mask, safety glasses, and gloves to start preparing some dye stocks. Now, normally, before I would start any of this, I would do some calculations about how much of each of these colors I was going to need for this project. And I did not do that today. And that is partially because I am planning on flying a little bit by the seat of my pants as I go about this. And when I go and pour the colors onto the yarn, I'm letting myself sort of see how much color there is. And really, after the first round, we could add more color if I feel like I need more color. And since my biggest containers can only hold 1 liter of dye, I think that that's the amount that I'm going to make. And we can always decide to adjust things, and I can always mix up more dye in the future because I'm going to be dyeing at least 2 dozen of these by the time I'm done. The other issue I had was a lack of large bottles. So that honestly determined how much of each of the colors I was going to be mixing up. I measured out 10 grams each of Intense Iris and Electric Violet, and then 5 grams each of Hyacinth and Teal Green, bringing our Teal and Hyacinth up to a total volume of 500 milliliters and the other 2 colors up to a volume of 1 liter or 1,000 milliliters. So everything is mixed at a 1% stock solution strength. To make things easier for myself, I measured all the dye into glass jars and then used boiling water to dissolve them to start with, before adding hot tap water and letting things cool before finishing the final volume. This is something that can just make my life a little bit easier. Some colors clump more, and the boiling water can help things dissolve. Now, everything I'm using today is dedicated for dyeing yarn and is never used for the preparation of food. Of the 4 colors, the Hyacinth and the Intense Iris did not dissolve that well. So it's good that we're playing by feel, because I'm going to need to shake them really, really well before we add it onto any of the yarn. I really, really debated about bringing some Caribbean blue into the mix. Caribbean blue is a gorgeous bright blue. This is a 0.5% stock, so I would dilute it substantially. But my concern is that when you mix this blue with a little bit of pink, it brings you to a more royal blue, sapphire blue category. And so I don't want to tone the overall yarn more blue, even though I will be happy with the blurple I think we're gonna end up with. It isn't gonna be a very pink leaning purple, and we've got the blue and the teal in there that'll mute some things. So I think I'm not going to use it. But if I was gonna use it, my plan was to take, and gosh, I probably have about 50 milliliters, but I was gonna measure how much dye I had before diluting it so I would still have a known concentration. But I'm not doing it, so I guess it doesn't really matter. I pre-soaked a bunch of our stunning Lurex yarn overnight. And as I probably mentioned in the intro, this yarn is 90% superwash merino wool, 10% Lurex, which is this silver strand. And even while wet, that silver strand is giving things a bunch of shine. And we should get more contrast in here once we've dyed it. There is no acid anywhere in here yet. Okay, in my shoebox, I have 8 cups of water. And now I'm gonna bring over 200 grams of our yarn and sort of scrunch it down into the pan. So when the yarn is in here kind of like this, scrunched up a bit, it's not like folded over. So we have one end really down here, one end really up there, but there are parts of yarn sort of woven through that are underneath things. And I think the order that I have planned is to have Hyacinth up at the top, followed by Electric Violet, and then Teal, and then Iris at the bottom. Okay, I think this is my plan. And I would say our dye stocks are still a little bit warm. So that may make things extra interesting for the prototype, and it's also harder to shake them up when they're this full. So it'll be easier and easier as time goes on. Let's start by taking and pouring some of the Hyacinth. I'm just going for it. Next up is the Electric Violet, pouring some in. Now the hope is to do under like 2 grams of dye would be ideal. Let's say some teal green. These are just our straight dye stocks. I'm not diluting anything yet. And at the bottom are Intense Iris, which again, I think we'll see some variability there because I've seen that it does not dissolve super well. So it's gonna need a lot of shaking as time goes on. But this is looking really pretty just as it is. And I have to make some decisions. Do I want, now that I've poured the colors on, do I want to try to work it through? And so to sort of blend these colors out some before I lift and move things around? Or do I want to let it sit, then add acid, and then lift and move that way? Ooh, I don't know. Because right now I can see from looking at the side, some of it may go down to the bottom, but there's a lot of white on the other side right now, even though it looks like we've got some ultra saturated areas here on top. You know what? Oh, I don't have any yarn mops on hand yet. Let me go get some. I'm gonna make myself like a paper towel out of dry yarn. I'll just have to remember to add acid to that later. And the nice thing about not doing this immediately after I've poured on all the colors is that, which, I mean, again, that is a time that can make a difference with some colors. My tap water is slightly acidic, so things could start striking before I move anything. But it means that as I come down and start shifting these colors in, it's okay that I waited a little bit, and that shouldn't cause any massive issues. Now, before going on the teal, this is where I'm starting to use the yarn mop. Now I still see whites on the bottom. So not everything is perfectly blended out, particularly not with the Hyacinth. But things have been worked through more than they would be if I had just left them. Because a lot of times it's fun to pour on the color, see how it spreads, lift and move. And there's nothing wrong with doing things that way. There's nothing wrong. I could pour acid on this and take it outside now and just let it absorb. But there's also nothing wrong with blending things out a little bit. And so I like what I see here. Gosh, I don't even know if I need to wait or if I just want to wait. It's hard. It's hard to decide as I'm making things up as I go along. And again, we're so fast and loose with, you know, when I pour, I sort of do a 1-2. How quickly I pour is gonna really reflect how much color we have. But let's go ahead and add 1, 2, 3 tablespoons of white vinegar. And I'm gonna lift the yarn up, give it a moment. And so we have colors on one side, more pastels on the other that you can kind of see. And then we're gonna add it back in and see where we are. Okay, and things have shifted a fair amount. I like where we are. We still have purple and I still feel some more like blue from the iris, but a lot, like adding the acid, like things went quickly. Like there's not that much color left. I think like the intense iris is one that spread out a lot, but this is so pretty. I think we are really, really good. Oh my gosh. I'm so excited. Okay. Now there's always a question of, do I need to add more color? Is it okay if we have some areas that are a little bit more pastel? Yeah, it's totally fine. And I can always add more color at any point in the process if I want. The one thing that would be harder is if I wait a while between doing things today and doing things a different day. Because the muscle memory, I could lose some of that. But I think this is the direction that I want to go. And again, it's a little bit different than the way I've done this kind of technique in the past, which is totally fine. Totally fine. And I don't know if on camera, there, I think if I zoom in so we're a little overexposed, you're gonna appreciate that that is bluer than the teal in the middle. And so we have dimension in here. I am really happy. So anyway, now I'm gonna pop a lid on here and let's go ahead and set up to do some more. Now in this plastic container, I'm not gonna be heating things up right now. My plan is to cold process this yarn, which means I'm gonna set it aside for 1 to 2 days before steam setting it to finish setting the color. Cold process yarn dyeing like this can be really helpful when I'm wanting to rely on that muscle memory, because I can set up batch after batch after batch in quick succession without waiting for me to heat set the yarn to re-free up the dye pots to dye some more. I am still able to get consistency if I'm setting things up hot, but using these shoe boxes, setting them outside for a couple days and then steam setting it together all in a batch is a workflow that works so well for me, and it's a process that I enjoy. And ultimately, that is one of the most important parts about dyeing yarn, is enjoying the process and loving the results that you end up with. And then if there's something that can make the whole thing easier for you, that's great too. I now have 4 containers, each with 8 cups of water. And I'm gonna add 200 grams of yarn to each of them with the zip ties pointed sort of closer to the camera and further from me. Okay, and now we're gonna go ahead and do all of the colors. Okay, I do want to give them a good shake. Whew. These are so pleasantly warm, which is glorious. Okay, we got the Hyacinth. And I don't know, whoop, I spilled a little bit over there. I should, given how much I've been pouring, and I'll have to do a test of like my pouring rate at some point, But I think, hold on, I can't, oh no. Okay, I went a little heavier with that one. Do, do, do. Do, do, do. This is my very, okay. I went a little heavier with that one. Oh, but I've got my yarn mop. Can wipe that up. Okay. It's hard, a little harder to pour the fuller ones. Oh man. Oh man, okay. But I have not used up half of the dye that I mixed, but it is easier to pour out of these 500 milliliter bottles than it is to pour out of the liter ones. Just, you know, for future reference. But the nice thing about having it this way, as I shake up our intense iris, is that I know it's okay for me to wait before I start moving. 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, oh, a little too much, that's okay. 1, 2, 3. Just doing my best. Gotta clean that now. Guess it's okay because we'll be dyeing more. Okay, and I can clean off the edge of our counter. All right, and now I can start trying to like work these colors through. And because I've got 4 going on now, I'm gonna start sort of over by the Hyacinth and sort of massage that color in there, knowing that I am also bringing some violet down towards it. But I'm gonna do that before, I could have started at the beginning, but before going into our more intermediate area. And this is just letting me work some of these colors down the yarn a bit. And now, oh, I still have color on the edge, but you know what, it's fine. Before going down into our iris color, you know, there was one year I think I used intense iris also on this yarn base, but I speckled probably with teal, electric violet, Caribbean blue in the middle. And I remember having a lot of variability with the iris that I painted on. And I wonder if that's because it does not dissolve very well, as I've found today making this stock. So those are all things that I wonder. But now we can do the teal, and we can try to bring some color to the other sides. I think we know, one of the things we know as I'm doing this, that we're not gonna get color like all the way on the other side. This is gonna be repeating-esque, but because we have the yarn scrunched in here, there is gonna be sort of like a randomness to it, which is really, really fun. I started to say before that my tap water is slightly acidic, and so I do see colors sometimes start striking to the yarn before we've added acid. And that is a reason why, even after I quickly will add acid and lift these in a moment, that's a reason why we see what we see. But I'm curious, I have some pastels on the side there, and maybe there's a handful of patches of white, but so far, so good. I'm really happy. So I'm gonna add my 1, 2, 3 tablespoons of white vinegar, and I'm gonna do this one at a time. I'm lifting the yarn up. I can't even see what you guys can see. Okay, I can see some white. Giving it a moment before bringing it back down. And I think that that color that is getting like more distributed around could be the iris. I don't know. I don't know. I have no idea how much consistency we're gonna have here. It would be funny if we have less consistency here. So I do 1, 2, I did this in a different order, 3. It would be really funny if we have less consistency between batch to batch here than we had when I added the dyes into the shoe boxes and then added yarn. That would amuse me greatly. But as we add it back in, this will help us get color like all over the yarn and down on that other side. And you know, they're looking consistent to each other. I think ultimately it's going to depend on how much color we add in. Now, one other thing that we do know for sure is that it could make a difference. And I'm not going to do this experiment this time. It can make a difference the side of yarn that I have the zip tie on. And that is something that I have seen for sure in the past. And it was counterintuitive because then there was one that I picked up from both sides. And so I don't know exactly what makes like the differences that we see in here happen, but I know that we're gonna have something that has like a softness to it, but also some beauty. Now, I see almost, so you know when you like take like a mica powder or something and you stir it into water, you see it swirl within the water, or like if you add glitter to water and shake it up. Maybe I have one of those I'll bring over in a moment if I can find it. There is a little bit element of that here, and that is something I see with deep magenta. Now, deep magenta is a color that doesn't always dissolve super well, and it's one of the primaries and the color I use all the time. And so I see like a little bit of these like powdery swirls in there. Now, I'm not concerned about like the colors like bleeding or not dissolving well. I think that with time things should be fine. We could end up with some color left behind. We could end up with some speckles, but I just wanted to point this out for the record. Now, Hyacinth is a color that sometimes disappears when you first add it to water with acid, and then it comes back a little bit stronger. And so I'm definitely feeling, I think I'm feeling it, but I don't know, I'm really happy with what I'm seeing here. I really, really like the way that these colors are behaving, and I want to try to get some of these drips of color before I go ahead and set these aside. Now that it is officially November, it's starting to get cold out, and so I can bring this outside, where maybe it's 40 or 50 degrees, or keep it inside my house where it's 65. And so this is the time of year where I will carefully stack things indoors. I always put them on top of like paper shopping bags so we don't stain anything. But that is now my plan. And my plan was also to dye a total of, I want to dye more, but I wanted to dye a total of 20 skeins in this first batch if I have enough shoe boxes for it. And I think I'm going to be able to manage that. So I'm going to go ahead and set these aside now. And while I'm doing this, I should address one more thing. Sometimes I'll choose to wait 30 minutes before even moving things like this, because as I moved, you know, I tilt and I shift, and that can have an impact on what happens with the color. In theory, I can't say for 100% that that is what's going to happen, but that's a reason why sometimes I choose to wait. And these drips that we're seeing here, that is a reason why I put these on paper bags. The only issue is that I don't think I can fit 5 containers up here at one time comfortably. Here are our yarn mops. This is the little vial I'm going to have to go clean. The feeling we'll continue to add more color to this as like we wait and go on. But let me go ahead and set up to do a few more. I know I already talked a little bit about cold processing yarn, but if I was going to dye each of these colorways individually and sort of set this up and then go and heat set it as it is now, which I could do by setting everything up in the shoebox, starting like I did, then transferring the yarn to like a catering steam pan or something, maybe pouring the residual color back on top. It wouldn't be exactly the same, but it would be a way to play around with it that starts a lot in the same way. If I were going to do that, even if I were to go and heat 400 grams of yarn at a time, I have space for 2 pans on my stove. And I would need to let it heat up, and I'd want to let it heat for about 30 minutes. And while I waited, I wouldn't be able to start the next one until that was done. And so by doing things this way, I am able to set up each of these batches back to back to back to back. If I wanted to take a break in the middle, I could take a break, but I don't have to take a break in the middle. And so that makes it easier for me to produce, I mean, I'm not hitting 24 yet, but tens of skeins of this colorway in one day. And the only thing that is keeping me from doing more right now is that I don't have more boxes that are free for some reason. I seem to be missing some or using some for other things. And the other is that I don't have that much more space to stack yarn so that way it can have the time to slowly absorb the color. And so that is my real reality here. But when it comes to finishing off this colorway, I'm going to be able to steam set it in batches, but that takes less of my focus and attention and muscle memory. And so even if I'm only fitting 6 skeins at a time when I go in steam, it's okay because I can, while that is steaming, I can have the yarn sort of stacked waiting to go in a steamer basket, and the boxes can be free, so I could set up a round of another 20, which I don't think I'm going to dye that many, but it makes that possible for me to accomplish. And that is a big deal. Or for the little batch of 2 that I just showed, I had the zip ties closer to me than the camera, just because I wanted to see the other side of it as I was lifting things up, but I kept the color order the same from the direction of the zip tie. It's just rotated for the camera position. I found it easier to add the yarn into the container with the zip ties further away from me, which I hadn't ever really thought much about before. But so that's just an interesting thing that I've now noted for myself. I am pleased with the amount of dye that I'm using and that I have left. In total, I measured out 30 grams of dye this morning, and I have dyed a total of 20 skeins. And I still have, by my estimation, about a third left of our electric violet and intense iris. And maybe I have between 50 and 100 milliliters left of our teal and hyacinth. So that means that of the 30 grams of dye I originally measured out, I think I have 7 or 8 grams left, which means that I used between, let's say, 22 to 24 grams of dye on our 20 skeins of yarn, which means that we are at approximately a 1% depth of shade across the board. My estimate is that we have a little bit over 1 gram of dye per 100 grams of yarn on average. Some of these are going to be more saturated, some of them will be less. I probably got a little more pour happy once I got towards the end of this batch, but all of this is just good to know. And I think if I was going to do another batch of 10, I would probably make up some more stock solutions, but maybe using half as much dye as I did today, because then I could add those new stock solutions to the older stock solutions that I still have remaining. It's not technically proper, but is what it is. Oh my goodness, did you watch me? And could you see me pour intense tires all over the edge of the container onto my floor? Thankfully, it all wiped up. There is no evidence of blue dye on my hardwood, at least not that I can tell. So I think we're good. I still can't believe I spilled everywhere. This is why I protect my work surface with like this shower curtain, which sadly, this particular shower curtain is probably near the end of her days. It could be close to a year since I've replaced it. But over time with vinegar and cleaning it, they do lose some of their waterproofness and get more stained. And so that's when I go ahead and replace it. Okay, and as for our really pretty yarn mop, there's a little more dye I can try to wipe off the counter and off the edge of these bottles. But a lot of this isn't even wet, and a lot more of it doesn't have any acid in it yet. So we're gonna remedy that in a simple way. But I just wanted to give a quick little visual representation of how much liquid is left in these containers. If I tilt it, it will sort of not give an accurate representation, but we have about a third of these left of our teal. I would say probably maybe around 100 grams, maybe 50 of hyacinth, but again, I don't know for sure, because I guess half full would be like 250. So approximate estimates, but I'm gonna set these aside and we're gonna do the yarn mop thing I said. Here's a pre-soak that had water and vinegar that I used today. And all I'm gonna do is soak this yarn in it. Yes, this is gonna soften the colors a little bit. It could cause some of them to spread upon getting more wet, but okay, fine. If I squeezed it out, then we see some color come out. Fine, fine. But now I'm gonna go ahead and steam set this for 30 minutes in my steamer basket. And I can add it in super saturated. That's not a problem. And then I'll remove it, set it aside to cool so we can wash all the yarn mops off camera. And we'll be back in a couple days to deal with the rest of our yarn. Okay, here are two of our sets. I'm not seeing the teal much anymore. Oh no. Oh no. Oh, that iris, since it wasn't dissolved all the way. At first, I think that like came in more. Am I really not seeing it? These are two of the like latest batch. Okay. You know what? This is very pretty. It is so hard for me to see right now. Okay, I do feel some hints of that teal in here. It has almost, okay, wait, no, there are some hints. It is almost gone. This is still a gorgeous, gorgeous color. But I was in for a little bit of a surprise when I removed the yarn. Now, oh my gosh, let's see. All right, I feel a little more of it in this one. I think the other thing that's different is because the color has absorbed. Okay, we can see the teal in there. Oh no, my white balance. That's more real. There is some teal in here, but since you see the silver first, it sort of dampens the total amount, but like, look at how subtle those colors are. Oh, but that silver just pops. Oh, I am in love. Goodness, I'm gonna wanna steam set everything for 30 minutes, and I'll show you that setup in a moment. There is a little bit of color left in here, but compared to the amount of color in the yarn, that isn't bad. I am gonna wash all of these containers, but I'm also gonna bring over some more. And these were some of one of the first batches or second batches that I did. How funny is it that I feel so little of the teal? I mean, it's in there. It gives us almost like a marine blue or like a navy kind of color. Oh, that's so cool. I honestly did not anticipate that this would happen this way. Oh my gosh. Because, you know, I saw more of that teal, but I don't think I was adding as much of the teal as some of the other colors. Like, it's present, but it's like a subtle hint. I'm really, really, really glad that I had it in there. I'm only gonna bring over one more container right now because I figured we may as well wash them steam set them 10 at a time. Ooh, this one I see a little bit more. Some of the teal. Ooh, I see a lot of color variation in this one. Ooh, fun. Oh, there's going to be variety, but look how shiny it is. I don't think I'm focused on the yarn. I think I'm focused elsewhere, but the contrast between that silver and the color is just so nice. And there you can see some of the teal notes. Oh, so pretty. Let me take you over to the steamer basket setup. Today, I am using my pasta insert, so I can fit 1 kilogram of yarn, 10 skeins of dyed yarn in here. Now, because there's so much yarn in here, it's gonna take a little longer to heat up and things aren't that hot or steamy yet. So I will go ahead and heat it for 45 minutes just to allow everything to set. But I think that we're in really good shape. I'm feeling really awesome about the color and everything. And I should note, it's only been about 24 hours that our yarn has been just sitting from when I set it up. and I should be able to heat it all in 2 batches. Now, if I was just using the steamer basket, I could fit 4 to 6 skeins in this big one. This is my 12 quart pot, and the 8 quart, maybe 2 or 3. So I could still do as much, but this allows me to do it all in one pot. The 30 minutes, or 45 minutes, sorry, are up. And by the time 15 minutes had passed, it got quite steamy in here. Oh man. And I'm now gonna start removing all of the yarn. Now things are gonna get mixed up. They're not necessarily gonna be next to their shoebox buddy as things cool. And when you use a pasta insert, you really wanna make sure that you are keeping a very close eye on your water level. There's a lot of water in this bottom one, because I had it close to start with. But let's remove the insert briefly. Okay, and the water in there is a little bit purple. I am not that concerned about it. I might be more concerned in a little bit. I'm gonna have the heat on low. I'm about to bring the next batch over. I would be more concerned about the purple there. Maybe if that wasn't the color of the water that we had left over before, and so some of that could have come down. I'm optimistic that we will be able to wash this without a lot of bleeding. But I will wait to dye up some more until I've washed this, right? But now I'm gonna go ahead and repeat and do the exact same thing with the rest of the yarn. We're not quite done with our second round of steam setting, but I definitely started adding way more dye as time went on, because this is the first prototype I had, and this is way lighter. Like, we're in the same light as we were where I was washing. Way lighter than things that we had, you know, in our later batches that are significantly darker. So, and those were the ones that I washed first. So I definitely got more and more pour happy as time went on. But I'm sure we'll notice some differences once I go ahead and show you the finished dry yarn in a moment. But I think that I know that this particular skein on top, which I will then lose in the shuffle of washing everything, that particular skein was the first one that I dyed. And one of the ones that I washed was one of the more last ones that I dyed. So, throwing that out there. Something a little perplexing happened as I washed the yarn. But first, I want to note that the yarn was still a little bit warm when I went to wash it. This is not something that I recommend, and may be the reason why I had some bleeding. They got worse when I added Synthropol. In the grand scheme of things, it wasn't so horrific. I'm only washing 200 grams of yarn here, but it was very perplexing and didn't stop until I added a little bit of white vinegar into the yarn. And then I rinsed the yarn 2 more times and nothing, no bleeding after that. So I don't have a great explanation there, especially since when I went ahead to wash the rest of the yarn, here I am washing 400 grams of yarn, and I had just added Synthropol, did 1 rinse. We're not seeing anywhere near the level of color that came out on 200 grams of yarn that I showed before. But the main difference here, I had let this other yarn finish cooling completely. So even though, especially if your yarn is non-superwash, I say let it cool completely to room temperature before you wash, there could be other reasons to let it cool to room temperature to wash. But let's go see the finished dry yarn. We got a lot of consistency. She says with an asterisk. There are 2 skeins here, which I think I have them with their lightest side up. But these 2 skeins are a lot lighter than everything else. I don't know if they're ones that I did more towards the beginning or what. There's some where the teal stands out more. There are others where I think that the iris sort of took it a bit. So clearly there is some variability from going about this by feel. But overall, we got a fair amount of consistency. Now, I did dye more on a second day, and those have consistency within each other as well, but we're seeing a lot more teal And they're a lot more similar to the lighter one. I think I got heavy-handed with some of my pours as time went on. And so, yeah, I guess I would mostly separate things into two different batches, the slightly less saturated and slightly more. And so, yes, like this one right here feels quite different from this one, but I think they're still very beautiful and fun, and I was intentionally playing around with something that would give us more variability. And so, you know, that's just kind of what happens. Just look at the contrast with the silver stellina. I love that barber pulling. It makes it so festive and fun. And up in there, you can see some hints of the teal. It was very surprising to me how present the color was before I waited a couple days, and then how much it got overtaken. But I think that, again, the intense iris probably dissolved more and became more intense as time went on. And since it hadn't been sticking to the yarn right away, that spread all over more, giving us some of that variability. Maybe. Who knows? And so maybe actually one of the differences between the 2 days is if more of the color on day 2 had crashed out of solution, and even though I shook the container, maybe it didn't come up as well, maybe we ended up with less of that iris. Who knows? All I know is that I like all of the yarn, and now I just need to go twist it up. Oh wait, we have our yarn mops. Here we have our beautiful swatch, all of the colors I was considering. Maybe I'll try to get a good picture of that so I can label them. But it does show that all the colors are distinct. I know we didn't use 2 of the blues that I had brought out, but our 3 purpley colors that I picked are each different from one another, which gives us a very like tonal effect, but with a lot of dimension. Of course, the teal is quite different, but I like it. And our other mops are also quite beautiful. But now it's time for me to go and start twisting. So I'll see you in, well, no time really. It'll take me a little longer to come back. This yarn is so pretty and twisted. I feel like I'm feeling some of those teal notes come through a little more, which makes me happy. The other thing of note is that the skeins that were lighter, and I felt like there were 8 of them that were lighter, don't necessarily feel like there's as much of a difference. I mean, those 2 at the end do feel a fair lighter, and so do some of those at the other end. You know, maybe it's just hard to see because everything is so shiny. And yeah, but there are obviously differences. I just love how reflective the Lurex is. So when you have silver stellina in yarn, you have multiple short, very thin, wispy pieces of the sparkly fiber. Lurex, in contrast, is a thicker fiber that is a super long continuous strand, which is how we have this regular repeating barber pole effect with it. And so there may be times when I refer to it as shiny versus sparkly, but it can definitely catch the light and sparkle, even though it's not really sparkling right here. All right, when I am filming, there we go. Need to have like a little bit of a spotlight. When I'm filming, there's so many lights in here that you don't really catch twinkling quite as much, but with a direct light, it is there. The silver is so shiny. Oh, I love it. What did you think of this colorway? I really wanted to create something that had some saturation so that silver would pop, but also wouldn't be too loud and busy, that the contrast with that silver would drown out the variation that we had in our colorway. And I think I nailed it. Even if we ended up with less teal in the final product, I think that iris really sort of had its moment after 24 hours versus where it was sort of when we started. But I really, really like the way this colorway came out. Now, I might have 1 skein of it left in the ChemKnits Creations Etsy shop. I don't want to promise anything. At the time of filming, I had 1 left, But there are still some 2025 Chanukah yarn samplers that feature a wrapped mini skein of yarn from each of the 8th nights, and then a bonus 20-gram mini to bring everything up to 100 grams. These samplers also have a lot of fun extras and a signed card and more. I'll have it linked down in the video description. I am Rebecca from ChemKnits. I love sharing my yarn dyeing adventures with you, whether I accidentally spill something on the floor or create something beautiful with no hiccups along the way. Please subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a new video. And I'll see you back here tomorrow night at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time for night 10 of the 2025 ChemKnits Chanukah special, where we will be dyeing a merino silk blend. Oh, I'm so excited for you to see how that one turned out. And then on the 24th, there will be the behind the scenes vlog where I'll talk about everything that went into creating the series. I guess Hanukkah ended already, but I can still say Happy Hanukkah, and thank you so much for watching.